I'm just going to pick on a couple of questions that I might be able to answer. A few of you, and in a lovely way, the kids have asked, where will we meet? What happens? And a related question, someone said, is there a way to stage this so that we could keep using the buildings? Others can speak better to the staging thing. I think the likely answer is probably not, partly just simply because there won't be access to toilets. So to kind of run church without toilets, even if kids' church was across the road, etc., is a little bit tricky. Probably we're all in. That means we need to go somewhere else. So the answer to where will we meet, I have several irons in the fire. I didn't want to, organise everything because we're not there yet, but I have irons in the fire. I have approval for one place. And basically, I think we'd look to meet in a school on Sundays. There's a few options. And that would kind of give us meeting space for church and for kids' church kind of opportunities as well. And then we've got other kind of groups and ministries that happen as well. And actually, where's Mark gone? Mark, there's a friend at the back. Could you just offer a hand there, please? There's kind of Friday ministries, and again, I've got irons in the fire about where probably some other local churches who don't use their buildings at that time in that way, where we could run kind of kids club, kind of splash fresh youth group. So things will change during the week. Things like a launch dinner, that'll be a bit harder to do. Not impossible, we've just got to find some other venue to do those kinds of things. Staff meetings, we already meet in the rectory. Some other midweek things will be different. I think we'll have to kind of go into homes a little bit more for, probably up to 12 months, the kind of time frame that we're looking at. But I think there's opportunities and possibilities. And as we kind of sign off, God willing, on this, we'll work out all the rest of those details and let you know. I'm going to go to, I'm going to invite John up for a couple of other architect things. I've got a very big list of questions and I'm just trying to work out which ones have been answered and haven't. So, John, could you come up and just tell us a little bit more about the entrance? I think some of us kind of thought, I'd said something actually, it's an inviting entrance, but you have to enter sideways and there's a railing kind of to the street. Yep. So just take us through the thinking about that.
Yeah, okay, so what was the word, Scott? A sheep? Sheep rail. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so there's a couple of things to consider here. So we did look at, actually we presented an option to the BCC where there was straight entry in, and the front of the building actually kind of stepped in and out. When you have stairs and tactile indicators and all those elements coming straight off the street, they obviously have to be on your side. They can't be on the footpath. So that's the first thing. But that takes up 2 meters in depth. Now, our proposal here with this entry is only 2 meters off the street front anyway. So we would have to recess everything another 1.5 meters further back away from the footpath. So you'd lose that front 1.5 meters of your building in order to have that entry. So that's the first thing. Yeah, we do have a handrail there, and it's mostly for safety reasons. You don't and I was saying this to Scott yesterday, you don't strictly need it for compliance. It's only when you have a 1 meter height difference, but if you have a vision impaired individual, if you have children running around, you want something to keep them falling off a 1/2 meter drop. So that's one of the reasons for the balustrade there. There are potential other opportunities for ways of actually trying to provide that entry work health safety barrier without it feeling like a barrier. So that's something that we can explore in the later stages of the project. But the last thing probably to point out is having the entry over on the eastern side closest to the church entry, just there where that lady in pink with the child is, which we're trying to group the entries as close together as possible. So you feel like the two buildings are interrelated as possible. Yeah.
Scott, come on down. There was a question about what provision have we made for furnishings. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. You'll see some furnishings shown on the diagrams, tables and chairs in the foyer, some tables and meeting tables and chairs in these new purposed rooms. So there's a modest allowance. I think it's $16,000 in the cost plan at the moment for furnishings, but it is fairly modest at the moment. As we move through into detailed design, we obviously get to hone these things, and you know, if we're winning some money in other areas, we can reapportion. So it's a juggling act, but there is some money in there at the moment.
Someone's wanting us to be thoughtful and good stewards, and so installing a lift means kind of maintenance costs and all that sort of stuff. So just a little bit about that.
Yes, part of the lift is to just provide that equitable access up to all 3 levels. So we maintain use of the existing crypt space. We can't, interestingly, John touched on it, the site has some flooding concerns. We do sit in a low spot on Varna Street. We're still working through that with our flood engineers and through council. What we've actually achieved is if you slide that image, Graham, for me to showing more of the west, and zoom out a little bit. Currently, we've actually got an opening down into the crypt, sort of off the street. So we have had times when water's risen up above footpath level and gone down into the crypt and flooded us. What we've been able to do is sort of close that off with building, so that now if water was to rise up, we haven't had water rising up to the level of the church hall. So we I think we've improved our situation a lot actually, and that's part of our discussion with council. The water would now need to rise up fully to the height of the hall to start breaching in the front doors. And we've shown a sort of small skirt there across the entrance, so it's only really the 2 front doors that would provide an ingress route, and there's measures around mitigation that we can employ for that sort of thing. That's a whole separate discussion. What it means is the crypt space needs to stay in its size. We can't sort of develop more of the basement as habitable, usable space. Council won't approve that. It could only be used as storage. So, but we still want to get access down to the crypt. The lift provides that. We can store, chairs, tables, trestles, things down there, bring those up through the lift and back into the foyer for use or set up for functions. Lift maintenance costs would need to go in our budget, and I think we had estimates of around $2.5 grand a year to maintain a lift. Yep.
Offices, we're going to lose an office if we come here and make a foyer. So what are options around offices?
Yes, so we will lose the office that Mark and Fiona and Kate use. The concept is to establish an office in the current creche room at the rear here for the rector. The porch space that we currently do welcoming in will have the new sort of glass doors in what will become the old entrance. Can be repurposed as a reception photocopy space, we're thinking, for Kate. And then this space here, actually, where Dave currently sits and the musos use, we can repurpose as space for 2 staff in here. So we wanted to try and keep the level 1 area free of office space and maximise it for ministry space. But we do want to care for our staff, so we're finding them adequate space.
One of the things you realise is we have a small site, and so we're really trying to find the best way to kind of use all the different spaces. Scott, there was a question about costs and how we've got, so I guess on the build cost, leaving aside contingencies, fees and GST, has that been, tell us how we've got to that number, because it hasn't been put to a builder yet.
Yeah, okay. In terms of the cost planning, part of the engagement with John's firm initially was to engage for MCA to engage a sub-consultant with the QS, a quantity surveyor. So they have been along the journey with us to date. They've provided cost estimate plans at a very early stage when the drawings were very conceptual, and they've provided 2 more subsequent ones. So it's their figures that we're using at the moment for our cost planning, and that's really as best we can go on at the moment. They're industry professionals. We rely heavily on their expertise. We won't actually know, you know, the rubber hits the road sort of thing until we engage with a builder. One of the questions was a good question in that builders are very busy, we know that. Could we engage with them early and secure them for, you know, early, mid next year? I think that's sensible, and our plan is to, once we get this DA and God willing, we can get the pledging right, the project's going, we get the DA submitted, we can then confidently engage with 2 or 3 builders who the diocese can recommend. We have those names, and one of them we've actually started talking to, but not in any contractual sense. We can engage with them and try and, one, assess their capability and availability for mid next year. But we haven't got there yet with that sort of firm building number. We have some escalation as well in our cost plan. I think we had 5% escalation on a February 2022 cost plan. So we are conscious that costs seem to continue to rise. So.
Thank you. These questions are for Simon, so thanks so much, Scott. For the sake of recording, we're not streaming, but we want to record this. Can you just tell us about feedback on progress? How are we going to do that in terms of the pledging? And someone asked, will there be a second chance later on?
Okay, so as I said, we'll get pledges in by the 5th of June. Once we work out whether we have enough, we will then go back to the congregation. I will then give bank account details for that tax deductible fund. What we don't want is people putting money into the tax deductible fund prior to us deciding we're going to go, because once it's in that fund, it's held in trust, and it can only come out of that fund either if that fund dissolves and then we distribute it to another tax deductible fund. It's not as simple as just giving it back to you, because if you put money in it, you're going to claim on the next financial year and all that sort of stuff. So we don't want people to actually put money into a bank account until we've decided to go ahead with it. Now, once we decide to go ahead with it, if that's what we do, then I'll be getting that out to everybody instantly, because obviously the 30th of June is very quick. If people are trying to mobilise X amount of dollars, whatever that might be, whether it be mobilise $1,000 or mobilise $100,000, it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It may involve selling shares. It may involve, you know, I don't know how else people, you know, shaking the tin upside down and counting all their coins. So does that is that the? Have I caught most of that question there? Oh, second chance, absolutely. As I alluded to earlier, if we do need to take a loan, now, if we get 3 times offer tree, that's 1.5 million, which means it will probably we will take a loan for 300,000. If we get pledged to 1.5, I would say Parish Council will say, great, let's go ahead. Opportunity for people to pledge a second time, you know, pledge in 2024, pledge in 2025. To knock off that money, because there's going to be $300,000 there that needs to be paid back at some stage, and the sooner it's paid back, the less interest we pay, and therefore we can get on and use money for other things like fixing the toilets at the back, like doing more on the rectory, like fixing up this area, or whatever it is that we need to do.
Thank you. Grant possibilities?
So we looked at a number of grants. Unfortunately, one of the big grants no longer accepts applications. One of the big foundations that used to support this sort of thing changed their charter about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, which is a shame. We'll be applying to community building grants, local and state government grants. One's coming out, which we'll be applying for on the 16th of this month. Which is a grant up to about, yeah, we've got to get it in before June. We'll be applying for that. Yes, absolutely, we are applying for grants.
And last one for you, just the tax deductible facility, just tell us a little bit more about that.
So we have 2 tax deductible facilities now. One is the one through the National Trust, which we've used for the roofing project and the pointing, and for a significant amount of the work that we do that involves the church here, we'll be able to use that facility for. We have a new facility which the ATO has approved electronically. We're waiting for the formal paper acknowledgement of that, but that has been approved. Our lawyers have notified us that that's been approved for any work that we do on the hall, which is the majority of the work that we're going to be doing is on the hall. And so it's going to be a bit of a juggling act as to where we want the money to go, but the majority of it will be through the fund that we have for the hall, and I'll be liaising with people as to how that works. So what will happen is that people put money in, I'll issue a tax deductible receipt, and then you can claim on your tax return. So if you do it before June 30, you can claim for 2021, 2022. Post June 30, you can claim on 22, 2023.
I'm going to steal the mic for a second. There's a couple of things that I can speak to. One was consultation with the neighbours. So I've been visiting all of the neighbours, kind of working out, and so all who are kind of immediate neighbours we've had an initial discussion or several discussions with, and we're wanting to do that as best we can. There's all sorts of fears come up as soon as there's developments and second stories and all that sort of stuff. So we're working on that, and I'd appreciate your prayers. There's always nervousness around that, although most of the neighbours that just seems like an obvious thing that you need to do when you're talking about accessibility and everything else. So that's neighbours, and we'll keep consulting with people. Someone asked, what will the kind of upstairs space kind of enable us to do? Partly let your mind run free. What are the opportunities? Now, I can think of a bunch. It's one more space for youth group. It gives us more flexible spaces. One of the things that we don't have many of is like medium-sized spaces. So we've started a new belonging night for those who are kind of new, and we've held it up there in the back corner. There's lounges, that's nice, but you're kind of in this cavernous space for kind of 6 or 8 people. It'd just be lovely to have a medium-sized, kind of pretty flexible kind of space that's light, bright, modern, so there's one example. There's all the different kind of exploring courses that we kind of offer to people in our community. The interesting thing that Mera and I have noticed over the last few years is our kids are getting older, so we used to kind of say 7:30, and now it's like 8 o'clock, so we need to get the kids to bed and manage all of that. And then the course we ran in March, there was one night where there actually just wasn't enough room in our lounge room anymore to fit everyone in. This would be the perfect sized kind of space to kind of run those kind of courses, and youth group and kids church and staff meetings and all sorts of things that we could do together.